Welcome back to our show, Marriage on the Rock. Some of the topics that you have heard or attended are related to marriage, and some are related to parenting. Today's subject is about how to discipline. There isn't a meeting, a family, or a discussion with counseling or priests that do not reach to a level how do I discipline my children. I want to say that in the Bible, the Holy Spirit wrote in Proverbs, "He who spares his rod hates his son, but he who loves him disciplines him promptly." How to discipline. In the Bible, some of the best examples, unfortunately, did not raise good children. So, for example, David, the prophet and the king, whose heart is similar to God's heart, had Amnon and Absalom, and both of them hated each other, and one killed the other. Because David did not really care to discipline his son. And we read in 2 Samuel 13 that when the King David heard all of this, he just was very angry, and he did not answer Absalom, his son, with good or bad. And that wasn't enough. Absalom did something very, very tragic and very bad, very horrific. But his father didn't have the rights or the guts to discipline his son well. And unfortunately, he was recently became a victim to another crime. Even Eli the priest initially was a very good priest and really was a high priest. But his sons were not well raised, and they did something very bad. And we read in 1 Samuel 2, when Eli was very old, he heard everything his sons did to all Israel, and how they lay with the women who assembled at the door of the tabernacle of meeting. So he said to them, "Why do you do such things? For I hear of your evil dealings from all the people. No, my sons, for it is not a good report that I hear. You make the Lord's people transgress." And that's it. He didn't really do much more, although his sons were really bad and transgressed the Lord's commandment and used their position as Levi and servants of the temple in a very bad way. Samuel, he was a great prophet, an amazing priest. But again, his sons were not as good as him, and he didn't raise them very well. We read in 1 Samuel 8, "His sons did not walk in his ways. They turned aside after dishonest gain, took bribes, perverted justice. Then all the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah and said to him, 'Look, you are old, and your sons do not walk in your ways. Now make us a king to judge us like all other nations.'" So we have seen examples in the Bible. Good people did not raise good boys and girls. And again in Proverbs 19, "Chasten your son while there is hope, and do not set your heart on his destruction." So why do we discipline? We discipline because there are mistakes that occur due to the environment they live in, the upbringing, and the society, and maybe their own self, their old self, the sins of the person. So we want to discipline our children because maybe they are learning from the society. Maybe that's a sin that they have, or maybe an upbringing mistakes. But we make mistakes in disciplining when we advise. Sometimes if the advice is well taken, it's great. But why do we fail to advise? We fail to advise when the advice is given without prior friendship between a father and a son, a mom and a daughter. And all of a sudden, the mom is telling her daughter, you must doing this and this, my darling, and you have to listen to me. And the daughter is just, why should I listen? She's never my mother as a friend. So being a mother is a great thing. Being a friendly mother or a mother as a friend, you make your advices to your kids much more valuable and more listened to. Why do we fail in advising again? Because we continue to blame them. I'm always criticizing my boy and girl and picking on them, finding mistakes, always telling them they are falling short compared to other people. And my sons and daughters are not willing to listen to my advices anymore because I'm always and continually blaming them, criticizing them, finding shortcomings. We fail in advising also because we ask of them of the impossible. My son may not be great in math, but he is very good in science subjects. But you are requiring your son to be A+ in everything. And then you keep advising him. But it's not in his nature to be equal in math compared to social studies or science. If he is not doing his best, I understand. But if he's doing his best and he's not doing great, but he's doing great in other topics, maybe you are asking the impossible. Some parents want their kids to learn music because they like their kids to be pianist or guitarist or whatever. But it's not in his nature or her nature. Maybe his sister is, but he isn't. But you keep advising and commanding and putting him down and comparing him to his sister because he doesn't want to listen to music, doesn't want to be a musician, doesn't care to be trained as a musician. And all of a sudden, he will not listen to your advices in other things because you keep putting him down because he's not good in something impossible to be good at, like, for example, music. And you can put many examples like that. Also, comparing your sons together, or your son and daughter, or daughter and her cousin, or son and a friend, makes your advices become difficult to listen to. Why should they listen to when you always look at me, I am your daughter, and you don't think of me that I am honored in your eyes? I am good. I'm not good enough. Because you always compare me to my cousin, and my cousin is always better, and daughter of so-and-so is much better than me. So why should I listen to you, dad or mom? Why should I follow your commandments or advices? We fail to advise when we are following the people's role models, advices. Rather than we follow the Bible and the church and the traditions of the church, we say, look, Uncle so-and-so did that with his son, I must do this with you, my son. But it may not agree with your system in your home. Whatever happens in Uncle's house may not agree with yours. Whatever happens with your sister's house may not agree with your own house. It's a different type of upbringing. But when you push your daughter to follow what the other people says, at one time, if you bring God, will say, should I follow God or should I follow aunt and uncle and this and that example and that? So we fail to advise also when we parents are not good role models. When I'm asking my daughter to do something I am not doing. When I ask him to go to the liturgy early and I'm sleeping. When I ask him to read the Bible and I'm watching TV. When I ask him not to lie and I'm lying. When I ask him not to judge people and I'm gossiping. How can I ask him to follow my advice, and I'm not a good role model. We fail to advise our children when we use the advice as an order, as a commandment. I am giving an order for you to do this. That's not an advice anymore. An advice meaning you want to portray the problem, you want to offer an idea, a recommendation, and you hope that they follow it. An order means it's a verbatim, it's an ultimatum, it's a final answer, and no one can be allowed to not follow. It's completely different. Completely different if you want to be followed as an advisor or followed as a marshal or a general in the army. We are not in the army at home. And believe me, a lot of our kids would follow other people's advices because they are easier on the ear, easier on the heart. And you know what? They will say, I'll never listen to that. He doesn't advise, he commands, he orders. Finally, why do we fail in advising our children? Because we keep repeating ourselves over and over again. Do this. Have you done this? Do this. I told you to do this. You still didn't do it? You must do this. And sometimes they say, you know what? I'm going to wait until the 5th time. I know this is the 6th. Mom will lose it. So might as well I wait for the 5th time. And at the end, our kids are not learning, are not following advices, and they are getting angry, and we are getting angry at them. So the topic today, how to discipline, and we only touched on one point. Why do we fail in advising? The second point, how the discipline itself fails. Not just the advice, but rather the discipline. The discipline fails when I use different measures in judgment. For example, today he broke a camera and I made a big deal out of it. And tomorrow his brother broke a camera and I don't make a big deal out of it. The first one, I put him in lockdown and I kept him there for many hours, and then another time, either he himself or his brother did the same thing, and the judgment was much easier. You know what will happen? They will never listen to your discipline. The discipline doesn't matter because you have different rules. You change the rules. You change what you will do rather than you have a problem, and if the problem happens, you should do this. But rather than you do this every time, you keep differing or changing your judgment based on the day or based on the mood, or maybe based on if it's your son or your daughter or your older or your youngest, and that's even worse. Because one of the other reasons we fail in disciplining, or the discipline doesn't make a difference in our kids, when there are no rules. I never told my son that there is a rule. Should you use texting in school, I'm going to take your phone away. I never told him. So now I found out that the teacher told me he was texting, so I take the phone and he's not getting it for a week. Where is the rule? I'm not against that you took the phone. I'm against that you never preemptively told your daughter or your son that there is a rule. Let me give you an example. Whatever phone carrier you have, Sprint or AT&T or anything, they give you a contract. And the contract is, if you exceed the number of minutes or the data you are using or the text messages or whatever, you will be charged extra that amount of money, $1 a day or whatever. There is also another clause, if you do not pay within 10 days from the bill, you will be paying an interest of about $17. And if you fail to pay, you will be increased to $24, and the third time we'll take the phone away. We'll cut off the line. There is a contract. You signed off on it before you took the phone. Why can't you treat your kids exactly the same? Tell them the contract, tell them the rules before you offer them the phone or you snatch the phone. Most parents will actually shock their kids by all of a sudden giving a rule of discipline without the kid knowing what are the rules of the game. You didn't tell him if he doesn't wake up to liturgy in the morning, he's not going to the park. And all of a sudden, he doesn't wake up in the morning, and in the middle of the day, no, you're not going to the park. Why? Oh, because he didn't go to liturgy. But you never told me there is a relation between liturgy and park. Where are the rules? We parents like to have rules. At your work, in the traffic lights, in paying bills, you are given rules. And you sign off on them. Don't try to treat your kids as if they're supposed not to have rules and they must follow whatever comes in your mind. That's called chaos. That's called absence of contractual agreement. So why discipline fails? Because we never tell our kids what could happen when we break the rule. Even our Lord told Adam, if you were to eat from this tree, you will die. It's not like he kicked him out of paradise without a warning. There was a warning. There was a rule that he broke. One of the reasons to fail in disciplining, when we become too tough in disciplining. You know, when a father comes down on his daughter so tough because she did something wrong, and his type of disciplining is too harsh, too exaggerated. She will never listen to your discipline because to her, you are such a tyrant. You bring your anger on your kids rather than you think how the discipline will change them, will make them better people, more well raised. Not that you bring upon them your anger, your frustration, your disappointment. That's not disciplining, and it's not going to help any of your kids. They are not benefiting from your discipline because you are not a role model, mom and dad. When you are a role model and you tell them, I'm not going to use my phone for a week because I start using my phone in the church and I was very upset from myself. That's a role model. You tell them, you know what, from now on I'm putting off my phone during liturgy because I found myself by mistake answering a text message or responding to whatever. You're explaining to them that you fell in a trap. And from now on, I'm putting my phone away. And you can tell them, Habibi, you can look at me. If you find me using my phone, tell me. You know what? You are such a good role model, mom. Because next time you tell your kid, take away your phone, you're not allowed to use it in school or in church, they will listen. Because you applied the rule to yourself. You're such a good person. One of the things, as much as I said, harshness and toughness in disciplining, also too much being careless in disciplining. Oh, he broke the camera, that's okay. He didn't go to liturgy, that's fine, next time. He hit his sister, that's okay. No, that's called chaos again. Because this kid knows there are rules in the street, there are rules in the traffic lights, there are rules in the school, there are rules in watching TV, there are rules in everything. How come you become careless about your own rules at home? Absence of rules and exaggeration of rules and being careless about the rules are all different aspects of the same problem. You could be too firm and too tough in pushing away your rules, and you may be too careless in pushing away your rules. Both are wrong. Another reason why discipline fails is really when you become shaky, hesitant. You tell your son, if I find you using your phone unlawfully in the school, I'm going to take it away from you for a week. It's a contract. And then you got the AT&T bill and you found your kid was using the phone a lot in school. And you don't do anything. You know that he broke the rule, but you didn't apply the discipline. That's wrong still. Because that tells him there are no rules. That tells him that dad is lax, or dad doesn't know what he's disciplining about. He doesn't even check the bill if I'm using the phone or not. So agreeing on disciplining in some sort, you must go about it. You may later on soften it, but you cannot just cancel it. Surprising your kids by all of a sudden coming down on them with a new rule and a new command and a new discipline do not help any of your kids. Because you need to tell me before. You need to preemptively warn me, and then I'll be ready for disciplining. Lack of communications, that you didn't sit down with your daughter and your son and start talking to them about the rules of the house, how are we going to grow to become good people, and why when you break that rule there will be a consequence of it. All of this, a discussion need to be happening. You need to explain why the rules and why the discipline. And the discipline are not because I want you to just respect me as a dad, but I want you to grow to become a good person. Because the person who always break these commandments, these rules, these directions, are a person who is going to be so careless in the society and eventually will not be respected. So we are discussing how to discipline. And we discussed when do we fail in advising our children? When do we fail disciplining our children? Next time, we'll continue on some other aspects on how to discipline. See you again with another episode, Marriage on the Rock.